The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player or situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Well, there you have it. It seems in hindsight, Matt Waldman, to be a little anticlimactic. I thought going in, I was like all excited that the NFL draft starts. There's like some big exciting things happen, the first day that seemed really exciting. I'm not sure how exciting they really were. We're gonna try and figure that out. But in the end, I feel a little let down. Is it just me?
It's probably like dating a movie star or some celebrity of some sort. It's probably like you're expecting more than the fact that they put their pants on just like everybody else. Well, maybe they don't. Maybe they have a production assistant put their pants on for them.
No,
but
I can verify it's true. They do.
Yeah. So, see, you would know. You cavort with these types.
It's true. It's true. All right, let's dive in though to some of the fallout and some of the things we'll be looking for going forward in the wake of the 2023 NFL Draft. I think first and foremost, from fantasy managers' perspectives, is this Bijan Robinson fellow. They say he's very good. I say he landed in a decent spot, right? This offense seems to be destined to run with Arthur Smith at the helm of it. They have some decent other pieces. Feel it or fuck it, Bijan Robinson is a top 5 fantasy running back as a rookie.
I'm feeling the possibility of it because really, when you look at Arthur Smith's offense and what Tyler Algier was able to do, it shows how good that offensive line was really playing. And Robinson is, I can tell you, a good couple tiers better than Tyler Algier, who ran hard. But Bijan Robinson has better cutback ability. He sees the field better. He's as good, if not more dynamic as a receiver. So really, you're looking at a scenario here where, like any other running back that you say, oh, he's got a chance to be top 5, like a legit chance, he's in that group.
We've seen some recent backs do this, Saquon Barkley, among others. I mean, so when you invest that draft capital, you tend to want to get to maximize the usage, and I think Arthur Smith will do that. As you said, they do have some other weapons there. It'll be interesting to see if the addition of Bijan Robinson allows Kyle Pitts to maybe pick up the pace a little bit, and Drake London, of course, all that is going to be Desmond Ridder related. So we'll see where that goes. The Lions, are you feeling their evaluation on Jahmyr Gibbs? They said they might have taken him 6th overall. They ranked him that highly, which suggests they may have had him ahead of Bijan Robinson on their board. Is there any reason why anyone would have done that? And just in general, how do you feel about their going all in on Jahmyr Gibbs?
As long as they had Bijan Robinson in the top as one of their top 5 players, I would say I'm feeling the idea that they would have taken Jahmyr Gibbs at 6, in the sense that Jahmyr Gibbs is a great fit for what the Lions want to do with their running backs. Now, I would say a very good fit, but I would still say Bijan Robinson is probably a little better as a route runner than Jahmyr Gibbs is right now. People don't realize that Alabama took Jahmyr Gibbs off the field with certain types of routes that you would expect Gibbs to be a part of based on the hype, but he catches the ball very well. I think he's going to only get better as a route runner. And the way the Lions want to use him, not only they're going to use him on draw plays and screens and things like that, but they are also going to let him run in the middle of the field, and he'll make good decisions between the tackles in a way that they would expect from one of their 2 main backs. So is he going to be in a position like Bijan Robinson to earn 15 to 17 touches a game or more? Probably not. But I think you're going to get a consistent 10 to 12 touches per game, and they're going to be high impact touches. And if he gets hot, you could see scenarios where maybe they run with the hot hand at times, and that doesn't mean that David Montgomery is, Montgomery will have some good weeks too, but it's not one of those scenarios like we saw with DeAndre Swift.
Let me just take that, dial out on this a little bit. It seems like the Lions are, one of those teams, they don't care what you think about what they think about players, right? Are you a fan of that? And by the way, I thought, when all was said and done and the dust had cleared, whatever you think of some of the associates, what do you think Gibbs merited that evaluation? Whether you thought Jack Campbell was first round level linebacker. I mean, you look at some of these players they got later, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Hendon Hooker. I mean, this seemed like a pretty good draft for them. How do you feel about the Lions just as in the way they evaluate and stick by their guns?
I think it's great because, I mean, they came into the league and the media wanted to laugh Dan Campbell out of the press conference. And it seemed like, certain aspects of the media were like making fun of like the way that he talked about what this team was going to be. And then sure enough, the team was that. Even though
I haven't seen any kneecaps bitten.
I haven't. Well, then I
I'm still
would
waiting.
I know you're a literal kind of guy, so I get it. But they're coming pretty close. I'll say this is that they play hard. They refuse to die. They come pretty close. They've played good football considering that their pass defense has been atrocious. They've been able to be in a lot of games that a lot of teams would not have been in, and that tells you the kind of fight that they have. So to me, this team is going in the right direction, and I don't. This team knows what it is. They've established identity. They know what they are. They know what they want to be, and so they're going to get every pick right. No, but I think that a lot of the picks they made were good ones.
Right. And so, an associated piece of that draft was DeAndre Swift moving on, traded to Philadelphia. He torched the Eagles last year. I think it was week 1, week 2. What was it, week 1? Lit them up. And so they remembered and they acquired him when he obviously became available. David Montgomery's still in that backfield working alongside Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's going to be a little bit of a limiting factor on Gibbs, I would have to think. But Swift going to Philly, does he benefit? Are you feeling he benefits from this move?
Tepid. To be honest, if I had to go one direction or the other, I would bet on fuck it more than feel it. It's a 1-year situation for him. He's basically going to get a tryout to see if he can beat Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. And I'm going to tell you this, both of them run better between the tackles than Swift does. I think that this is a little bit of an infatuation of what they think the player is as opposed to what he actually is. DeAndre Swift has not been a good decision maker between the tackles. The runs where he does benefit are space runs. And so when he does look like he's running well between the tackles, it's because they're running delays and draws, which aren't really between the tackle runs in the way that things are set up. It's more of a let's create a lot of space in the middle and you play return specialist. That's what they're hoping for when you do that. He bounces too many things outside, and he doesn't have great speed or quickness or or acceleration. It's kind of a weird combination where it's just good enough on each end, but he's not as big of a big play option as you would think. He benefited a lot from game scripts where the team was behind and that they needed to throw underneath because opponents were giving up the underneath zones. I don't think you're going to see that a lot in Philly with that team. I think you're going to see different game scripts. And honestly, to me, Swift is the type of guy that I set a trade offer to a team in Dynasty for a 4th-round pick in my rookie draft for Trey Sermon before the draft. And I knew he was going to wait until after the draft to take it. And I didn't care. I was like, I saw DeAndre Swift traded. I just said, fine, go ahead and execute the deal, because I think that Swift is the type of player that he may get some key opportunities with a better offensive line, but at the end of the day, they didn't keep Miles Sanders because Miles Sanders, while he got better, was inconsistent with some decision making. I think that the guys they did keep, they know what they can do. So I don't see DeAndre Swift repeating what he did. I think at best he's a running back 3, running back 4 in fantasy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. A couple things. We're calling on Sirius. Jeff Ratcliffe said, he's still DeAndre Swift. New play's great, but he's still that guy. Also, the Detroit offensive line was pretty good offensive line as well. Availability is a good ability. We'll see between him and Rashad Penny, maybe they can cobble together an entire season of running back one production with Gainwell and Scott chipping in, because we know Scott's playing the Giants twice a year. There will be touchdowns, people. Moving on to the quarterback. So let's go with the top 2. Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Feeling either of them as viable depth in redraft this year?
I think Bryce Young, because of what he can do off structure. I know that people think about C.J. Stroud in the Georgia game and that he did all this stuff great off structure. I thought he was competent off structure, but I didn't think that it completely changed his evaluation the way that you hear in the media narratives from that bowl game. So Young, to me, he also has I think a more experienced cast surrounding him and an offensive line that's getting better. I mean, Stroud might have some good guys along the offensive line himself and Laramie Tunsil. Green was maybe a little tougher to evaluate, but their center and their right tackle are a little bit weaker. So I'm going to go with Young.
No, fair enough. I think I would as well. I think the Texans have a little bigger lift just in general, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Anthony Richardson, a player you love, I love because you love him, but also because I have eyes and I watch the scouting combine. And just, like Anthony Richardson himself said, he is not human. He's an alien in those athletic regards. So I don't think any of us have seen probably enough of him on the college football field to make any definitive decisions. But I want to see, let's frame it like this. Shane Steichen, feeling him as the right coach to get Anthony Richardson on point.
Yeah, though I was a little worried because when I think of, Jim Irsay giving
well, he's the coach, but,
okay. Yeah, I know. But when I was thinking about, Jim Irsay being the guy to
Coach
have
Irsay.
this conversation with Richardson about how he needs to play, and I thought, they probably had to convince you not to take Will Levis. If you had the conversation you had with Anthony Richardson, this is the reason why I didn't think the Colts were even going to draft Anthony Richardson, just because it seemed to be a mentality that was rooted in a little bit of ignorance. But hey, you know what? I'm glad that the Colts did make the choice, and I don't think we need to get him on point in the way that some people think, but we've established that. Shane Steichen has experience developing quarterbacks and doing it in different ways, and really developing means developing the offense to maximize what the quarterback has developed within himself. And I think that what he did with Jalen Hurts is a good example of that. And you're going to see some similarities. The difference is that I would say that Anthony Richardson has less experience than Jalen Hurts, but more savvy with the things that are hard to teach and more athletic. So I think this is a good match.
Yeah, my on-point references to maximizing potential would have been a better phrase there. But I think the thing
I think it's accurate to have a discussion because most people will think it's on point.
Right. Yeah, well, certainly, all the pieces are there, but I mean, 13 starting games. I mean, there's work to be done, and the sub 60% completion, is an issue, and it seems like he's better throwing the deep ball than he is the shorter balls, just on a surface level, and maybe that's not the scouting evaluation, but I mean, I think there's clearly some work to do here. So I'm just feeling like Steichen having experience, not just I thought that choosing. And whether that was his total decision or not, choosing the different paths and the way they developed Justin Herbert with the Chargers when he was there, where they were super pass heavy. They took a different approach with Jalen Hurts, where they went heavier with the run in Philadelphia. Just that experience. Just if my complaint about Anthony Richardson is, and I think I would have taken him. I thought all along the Colts were going to take him. I might have taken him as the first pick overall just for that huge upside because I am a greedy bastard and I want everything I can get. But I mean, I think what people feared was that lack of of experience at a highly competitive level, and so I'm hoping that Shane Steichen is the guy that can get him developed to the point or get him up there. And we've seen, I keep throwing out that Josh Allen, wasn't very accurate when he came into the league either, and he got more accurate. So I'm hoping that Steichen is maybe the guy that can get all the pieces together that we want to see out of Anthony Richardson to maximize that freakish athletic ability.
Yeah, I think for me when I look at that is, I mean, I understand when people look at the completion percentage. What I will point out is that when you chart the games, you actually find that there were more drop passes than pretty much any quarterback in history other than Dan Marino in the college game. And when you look at from the 80s on. So that tells you that there's a little better accuracy than people think. But I would say some of the decisions that result in maybe not recognizing coverages, things like that will lead to interceptions are going to be the issue with him.
He's going to play because Coach Irsay said he is the starter already. So
see, there you go. Well, listen, Hopefully, Coach Irsay sticks to his old wardrobe. We'll just go from there.
We'll see. Go back to buying musical instruments, Coach. Stetson Bennett, feeling him as having the best landing spot of all the day 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm totally feeling that because really they didn't have anybody else. They don't have anybody else behind him. And
zero.
Matthew Stafford's
He's the only
aging,
guy on the roster.
and he's always going to be a tough guy. He's going to die hard, and that means that when he, the number of back injuries that he's had, he's taken a pounding during his career. Bennett could easily play this year at some point, and I think Bennett is good enough that I'll put it to you this way: if the Jets had Zach Wilson or Bennett as their choice to pick in the draft a few years ago, and they were in the same spot, I would have easily had Bennett with a higher grade. And actually, Stetson Bennett might have been one of my top 3 to 4 quarterbacks last year easily, and probably would have been the most successful in terms of draft capital. He probably would have had draft capital on par with what we saw with Kenny Pickett.
I think that makes perfect sense. And it does seem like we saw last year Baker Mayfield walk in the door and come in cold and have a decent game. I mean, you see that catching lightning in a bottle kind of situation when teams don't know what to prepare for or whatnot. But I think Bennett there with some time to actually learn the offense, that probably is a good thing.
Yeah.
Running backs, Zach Charbonnet ends up in Seattle. You view him as a legitimate threat to diminish Kenneth Walker III's workload?
Yeah, I do in terms of workload. I think that this is going to be a 1-2 punch. They want a 1-2 punch. They also want to run a lot more, and I'm going to bring this up just because I think about the Rams, the Rams, and then moving to Seattle. And Shane Waldron came from the Rams, and when he was with the Rams, they ran 11 personnel over 90% of the time, or like between 80 and 90% of the time. That's what you thought they wanted to do in Seattle, but they didn't have the running backs or the wide receiver, the health of their slot receiver, D. Eskridge, who was their rookie who got concussed, and he never really was able to help them get to that 80-90% range for the past 2 years. So he went with more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. I think this year with JSN, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, we're going to see this team run a lot more 11 personnel, and it's going to look a lot more like some of what the Rams did than what we'd seen in the past. So I would say, I'm going to add in that Jigba might also be a threat to diminish the run game a little bit more, just from the standpoint that I think they're going to throw enough to him and still keep those other 2 receivers afloat. I would not be surprised if Geno Smith has a 5,000-yard season and has 3,000-yard receivers.
That'd be fantastic. By the way, this is not a new thing in Seattle, right? Anyone who had previously been interested in Chris Carson was probably upset when Rashad Penny showed up. People who were interested in Rashad Penny were upset when Kenneth Walker III showed up. People who are invested in Kenneth Walker III are upset when Zach Charbonnet shows up. This is a natural progression for the Seattle Seahawks. People, get used to it. You're not already. Tyjae Spears, short term. Is he a concern for Derrick Henry investors this year?
No, but I think that he'll be a nice addition to help the team, and you're going to see maybe some expanded work in the terms of what Dontrell Hilliard did on certain weeks with Derrick Henry in the equation. They like to throw the ball out of the backfield. They like to have a scat back. They've been trying to do that with an aging Deion Lewis. It didn't work. With Dontrell Hilliard, it had some success. I think you're going to see the same thing with Spears, but you may see that they lessen Henry's workload enough that maybe he's not a top 5 back this year or top 3 back this year. Let's say he's not a top 3 back this year, but top 5, top 7, top 10, I still think you should plug him in.
Right. It's not unusual if you've been out there drafting in best balls prior to the draft. And I'm sure, the fears anytime a person is added a position increases, but you're finding Derrick Henry going late in the 2nd round. It's not unusual. I've seen him in the 3rd round as well. And when he's there, he is mine. Hell, he's mine in the 2nd round. I'll still draft him in the 1st round. I'm not afraid of Derrick Henry there, given the right circumstances. Devin Achane. We know what this Miami, backfield is all about. It's about just guys doing things that are more than just the guys do, right? They put them in good position. Is Devin Achane capable of delivering in the Miami backfield?
I think with a limited workload, yes. I want to see proof that the team feels he can hold up on more than a 12 to 15
He's a smaller guy.
touch thing. Yeah,
right,
he is a smaller guy for sure.
185, is that?
Yeah. So if he can maintain 195 to 200, I would feel better about him getting 8 to 12 touches per game. But I think you're probably going to see, especially I think Jeff Wilson's going to benefit more from this than anybody, because Mostert's the one who's aging, probably the one that gets dinged up the most. Achane will get opportunities there, but then also you want to make sure he adjusts to the passing game, so they'll probably keep Myles Gaskin around. And it seems to me, I think Achane's still going to be a part of a 3-back split, no matter who the other two backs are.
That seems fair enough. Wilson and Mostert, big and fast. I mean, they got that going for them, and they're already familiar with the offense. Roschon Johnson, feel it or fuck it. Does he get the best landing spot of the day 3 running backs?
Fuck it, even though I like where he went, because Donta Foreman is on a 1-year deal. Roschon Johnson certainly is a nice player. I think he'll take over that Donta Foreman role in 2024. But the guy with the best day 3 running, I think, is Zach Evans. Zach Evans goes to the Rams. Kyron Williams isn't fast. No. He isn't big. He isn't strong. He can run some pretty routes in practice when they show him in high school making moves on moves, which got Andy Isabella out of town in Arizona pretty quickly. Maybe he'll be back coaching my old neighborhood, Mayfield Heights, where he went from high school someday. But you look at what's behind him. Ronnie Rivers at Fresno State is a nice undrafted free agent scat back, who could use kind of like Jalen Richard, but not as powerful. So really, there's nobody behind Cam Akers to do what Cam Akers can do, other than Zach Evans and maybe Tyon Evans, and they're both sleepers. They both have good spots to maybe become the second and third backs on this Rams depth chart. And to me, the Rams traded up a lot of picks within the round to get Evans. I think they know what kind of player he is and what he's capable of. And Akers is on a 1-year deal. Akers played great last year at the end of the year. I was really impressed with how he looked, and I think he could have a strong year this year. But and maybe they re-sign him after that, and that dooms Evans. But all it takes is one injury, and Evans could be the back of the future. Or
when Cam Akers getting sent home again for a number of weeks, which he was last year, and which Kyron Williams did not take, charge of anything. And by the way, Cam Akers did a lot of that work late last season behind probably the most diminished offensive line in all of football.
Yeah.
And right now you can buy him best balls at about running back 25, 26. That's pretty good value.
All day, every day. I'm
with you.
Yeah.
I have a lot of shares. Okay. So just kind of spinning off that last question about Johnson, and you throw in Evans. Sean Tucker gets $155,000 guaranteed as an undrafted free agent in Tampa Bay. How should we view this?
We should view it as that Rashawn White did not look good last year between the tackles, and they're still hoping that he's a worthwhile player. He can catch, he can run fast, he's got to be better as a decision maker. That line has to be better. That quarterback is going to have to take on more than what he's used to taking on Baker Mayfield. But I'll say that overall, there isn't really anybody behind him that you're going to look at that's great competition. And Sean Tucker had some of the best acceleration of any of the running backs in his class. So I think there's a good opportunity for him to carve out a role. And if White falters, Tucker could be a nice surprise.
So the wide receiver run began in round 1 at 120. Seattle taking Jackson Smith and Jigba, as we discussed earlier. Quentin Johnson went at 21 to the Los Angeles Chargers. Zay Flowers, 22 to the Baltimore Ravens. Then Jordan Addison out of USC goes at 23 to the Minnesota Vikings. Tell me why I would be wrong to believe Jordan Addison has the most productive rookie season.
Well, for the reasons I explained about Jackson Smith and Jigba being surrounded by two other strong talents and getting a lot of great matchups, could be one argument. You could also argue the same thing in Baltimore, even though there's a lot of bias about that. We still wonder whether Lamar Jackson can really expand an offense in the passing game, and there's a lot of weapons. But I'm a big believer that the if you've got good weapons around the player, they get better matchups and bigger plays, more efficiency, and a lot of targets. But I will not begrudge you the idea that he could be the most productive of the four. I'm feeling the idea because you've got the big bully in Justin Jefferson on one side, you got T.J. Hawkinson as well, and Addison is going to get some primo looks with a veteran quarterback. So, to me, he's one of the top 3 to 4 wide receivers on the board of the rookie wideouts, and that means that I'm not going to argue anybody saying that he will be the guy.
So Matt Waldman is feeling Bob Harris is totally correct in expecting Jordan Addison to.
That's right. That's the long-term one with that.
That's a winning proposition. Patrick Mahomes, are you feeling him being enough to make Rashee Rice the most interesting day 2 wideout?
No, fuck it.
Nah.
And it's just because I think there's just so many guys that are on that roster. I mean, look, Richie James played well last year. They brought him in. Sky Moore, they drafted last year. They still have him in that mix. You've got Kelsey and Tony already, unless Rashee Rice just overtakes Marquise Valdes-Scantling right away. And while a lot of people might go, that's very possible the way he drops the
money
football.
says maybe not.
The money says maybe not. And Marquise Valdes-Scantling drops the ball almost as much as Rashee Rice does. And so when I hear the NFL Network crew go, well, we just wondered why we saw him lower on so many boards from people out in the industry. It had to do with the conference. I was like, no, it had to do with him clapping on the targets like he was at one of Bob Harris's concerts. And that's not, he makes some tough plays. But I didn't even mention Justin Ross, who now is healthy and has another year, who I would have rated higher than Rashee Rice. So it's possible, but I don't think he's the most interesting day 2 wideout.
Right. And by the way, just an aside there, and I mean, we were all kind of excited about Justin Ross. I think the people who I've talked to in Kansas City are not very excited right now about Justin Ross.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's not panning out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's look at another off-schedule guy. And this may be a question about a player I probably invested in a draft before the draft. So Xavier Hutchinson, will he benefit from a clear path to workload in Houston? Is this like maybe a better landing spot for him than some other spots?
Yeah, I think it is, mainly because you got a lot of guys on one-year deals. Robert Woods isn't going to play forever. That's the role that he would probably have an opportunity with. Nico Collins has been decent, but he hasn't been great. So there's opportunity there. Tank Dell's mainly, he can play one of 2 positions. He actually could probably have a potential to play all 3. Hutchinson can probably play 2. John Mechie isn't out of the woods yet. There's a lot of it's pretty cloudy right now in terms of what that depth chart looks like. And Hutchinson is the type of guy that can probably endear himself in a couple of levels. And with his route running, I think that he could be a good match with a guy like C.J. Stroud.
So you mentioned Tank Dell. Am I wrong? Should I have learned something from Tutu Atwell? And is it better to be like a certain size to play in the NFL, or is this 5'8", 165-pounder different?
That's a good question. And the difference with he and Tutu Atwell is that Atwell is not the route runner that Tank Dell remotely is. Atwell is mostly speed, and his open field skills are based more on speed, whereas Tank Dell is much better at the catch point, earning position. Also, what he does off the line is much more sophisticated. He's a much more sophisticated route runner who holds up pretty well. The size is still a concern, so it's a fair question. But I would say that it's there is a better chance, I think, for Tank Dell to be a fantasy viable player than what Tutu Atwell can ever hope to become.
Deuce Vaughn says Tank Dell's high, tall as hell. So Dalton Kincaid goes to the Buffalo Bills with first-round draft capital invested. I think that's worth noting. Feeling him emerging as a potential fantasy starter this very season.
Yes, because if I'll put it to you this way: if Kyle Pitts did it in year one, and Pat Freiermuth almost did it in year one and did it for parts of year one, I think Dalton Kincaid can do it with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And he will likely be the second option in this passing game by year's end. And if I'm in a 1.5 premium PPR, he's the number 1.01 player
Note-taking.
in 1.5 PPR rookie drafts.
There you have it, people.
Yeah.
Matt Waldman making news here on the Field It or Fuck It podcast. I'm feeling that fucking thing. All right, let's look beyond Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, any of the other day two tight ends being viable fantasy assets this season.
I think both could be, because you look at Chig Okonkwo last year, and they had Austin Hooper in town in Tennessee, and Okonkwo had moments. I think Laporta and Mayer are better players. And Mayer being in a situation where with Austin Hooper there, he probably will start to get more and more looks, but I think that you're looking more of a Pat Freiermuth type of end of the year where you're not drafting him. You're picking him up mid-season. Sam Laporta is a different story. I think Sam Laporta may be in a good enough situation, especially with the way he runs routes as a detached receiver, that he might become a viable asset. I would consider him late as maybe my second tight end and take the chance for the upside.
Holding out that hope. We saw the Lions last year. TJ Hawkinson got his 3 touchdowns and was traded away. Then Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra rack up 8 from the position. So there's potential there, people. And again, I might be talking as someone who drafted Sam Laporta in a dynasty draft before the NFL draft. Let's talk
choice.
a couple of draft adjacent items here. Let's say Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook. You feeling them remaining in place this season? Now that there have been no developments during the draft, no major developments. Let me change that. No major developments.
Absolutely, though I think Chase Brown is a guy that deserves mentioning out of Illinois.
Right.
That he's probably going to be the running back too, pretty easily in that, unless he just completely. There are some things that are a little concerning from a scouting point of view that you look at and go, "What on earth are you doing?" But they're moments. They're not the norm. If those moments become the norm, maybe they do have to roll with a veteran behind Mixon and get somebody out there. But I think that Brown is capable. Dalvin Cook, I think he's going to remain in place. I would say another guy that benefits very well from what happened in the draft, or not what didn't happen in the draft, is Keontae Ingram behind James Conner, the running back out of Arizona, who basically he and Tyson Williams are going to be running backs 2 and 3 heading into the preseason.
We're a team with a new offense without a quarterback, right? So this is something to keep an eye on if you're out there in the best ball rooms and you see James Conner sitting around in rounds 5, 6, 7, 8. Ask yourself why you have not taken him yet. I realize the downsides with him. And by the way, Dwayne McBride goes to Minnesota. You mentioned Chase Brown goes to Cincinnati, so they did add some pieces, but that guaranteed money or the deal that Alexander Madison got kind of suggests he'll be there a couple of years. But with all the uncertainty surrounding Cook and Mixon, I don't know that it's totally resolved, but it's much less uncertain. I would have to agree with you. And finally, Lamar Jackson contract. Feeling that is actually the biggest draft week development.
Yeah, I actually do, because it sets the stage for one. Agents probably did not want this to go as well as it did.
Right.
So they're probably leaking things too and saying things that were being said in the media. It shows you that a kid who, it just shows you once again that Lamar Jackson is being dramatically underestimated throughout the length of his career in just about every facet. And here he is. He didn't wilt under the pressure. My buddy Jason Wood at Football Guys, who, listen, he works in the financial industry. He understands a thing or two about negotiations. He said, listen, mea culpa. I thought I really didn't think this was going to go well at all, and kudos to him. And I think that's the expectation most had. But I do think that It means that the Ravens are saying effectively on the field, we drafted you because we thought you could be a terrific player for us and terrific playmaker for us. But our offense says we didn't really think you could be a great passer. We thought you could be good passer, a great runner. Now we're in a situation where basically it says, all right, you say you can be a great passer. We're going to pay you as such, and we're going to give you the support to do it. We're actually going to believe that you could be the passer that you actually showed a lot on tape, at Louisville in
also in 2019.
Yeah, and an offense that was run by Bobby Petrino, who many would say was one of the best offensive coordinators and offensive minds as a pro offensive coordinator. And Jackson ran a pro-style offense that people forget about. So, yeah, I think it's one of the biggest developments.
Well, I will quote Lamar himself, say he throws pretty good for running back. He also negotiates pretty good for running back. So there you have that. Lamar using a little bit of humor against his detractors after his MVP
Lamar
season.
Jackson can flip off everybody, and I will still be a fan.
He should flip off everybody. Honestly, everyone has said a bunch of stupid stuff about him, and he just keeps continuing to prove them wrong. So, and I hope he continues to keep proving them wrong.
His mama raised him right. I'll say that, and she seems to be she seems to be very helpful even now.
Well, I would say, to your point, I mean, getting rid of Greg Roman, bringing in Todd Monken with super productive offense we've seen the last couple of years in Georgia, created a lot of good players, produced a ton of offense. I forgot I could swear here. I could say a shit ton. It's like radio pod. I don't know where the hell I am.
It's Monday.
I'm like old. Get out of here. All right, Matt. That's it. We'll get out of here on that. Love you. Goodbye.
Love you. Bye.